Lower your voice, now. I'm not asking again.
I didn't do anything, man. This is ridiculous.
You're getting loud. You want problems? Keep talking.
You came at me first. I'm just explaining.
Turn around. Hands behind your back. Do it!
Wait. This just got way out of hand.
The night was heavy with tension, the streetlights flickering over cracked asphalt. A single word tossed carelessly across a parking lot became a spark in a powder keg. Bodycam footage captures the exact moment calm fractures, the officer's voice tight, measured, then snapping, authority twisting into control. Every syllable, every movement now permanent on digital record. Here, words are no longer mere speech, they are evidence, triggers, and in an instant, handcuffs waiting to close. Watch closely, not as a spectator, but as a witness to the hidden mechanics of authority and consequence. This story is a mirror of law, impulse, and human fallibility. Engage, reflect, and let the tension linger with the weight of accountability. The night had a weight that pressed against the chest. Streetlights flickered like tired eyes over the cracked asphalt of the apartment complex parking lot, pooling shadows around the chain-link fences and rusting vehicles. The air smelled of wet concrete and engine oil, a faint trace of cigarette smoke drifting from a distant balcony. Patrol car tires crunched on gravel as Officer Daniels eased closer, radio murmuring the faint buzz of dispatch updates. One routine call, a complaint about shouting in apartment 3B, had seemed trivial at first. But beneath the hum of fluorescent lights spilling from the stairwell, a tension lingered, palpable and invisible. He stepped out, boots clicking in rhythm with the night. Body rigid, flashlight slicing the dark. The camera mounted to his chest captured every movement, every subtle twitch of muscle. The way his shoulders squared, the tilt of his head as he scanned the lot. On the bodycam, time felt both immediate and stretched, the slight rustle of a plastic bag, a distant car alarm. Even the cold edge of winter on his face were recorded in meticulous, unforgiving detail. Then it happened. A voice, sharp, careless, meant to tease perhaps, or simply vent irritation, cut through the quiet. Just one sentence, tossed across the lot, innocent enough. If it weren't for the tension already coiled beneath the surface, the words landed like a pebble in a storm drain, sinking fast and impossible to ignore. Daniels froze for a fraction of a second, the precise moment captured clearly in high-resolution bodycam footage. His breath hitched, not from surprise, but from the sudden crystallization of responsibility and authority. Every training scenario, every procedural guideline drilled into him during his months at the academy, replayed in his mind. Approach with caution. Verbal de-escalation first. Protect yourself and the civilian. But instinct, sharpened by years of repeated exposure to unpredictability, nudged the edge of his patience. He stepped forward, flashlight tracing the contours of a shadowed figure leaning against a car. The camera caught the way light reflected off the lenses of his glasses, the subtle tremor in his hand, despite the strict posture. "Sir," he said, voice measured, clipped, the syllables stretching carefully over the concrete silence. "Can you step away from the vehicle?" The response was a smirk, a shrug, and a repetition of that sentence, faster this time, louder, with an undertone that dared confrontation. The air shifted, heavier now, a tangible pressure in the camera frame. Daniel's internal clock ticked with procedural precision. Assess threat, evaluate risk, contain escalation. His hand hovered near the holster, not for aggression, but for readiness. Dialogue became a dance of dominance and restraint, the civilian testing limit, the officer holding to protocol, but tightening with each defiance. In that stretch of night, in that narrow corridor between vehicles, words became more than speech. They were sparks, and sparks in a dry lot, under a flickering lamp, can ignite faster than anyone anticipates. Dispatch crackled again, the voice distant and unaware. "Unit 14, please advise. Caller reports." Daniels cut the transmission with a subtle flick, his focus narrowing entirely on the figure before him. The lot felt smaller now, edges closing in, shadows stretching like fingers toward every corner. The bodycam captured every nuance. A flash of eyes, the way the civilian's posture mirrored defiance and mockery, the cold reflection of asphalt and light pooling in the shallow puddles from an earlier drizzle. Silence settled for a heartbeat. Then, like a match struck too close to dry tinder, Daniel's patience broke. A single, firm instruction carried across the asphalt, every word sharpened by authority and fatigue, echoing in the lens, in the night, in memory. It was not yet physical, not yet irreversible, but it was the moment where routine fractured, and a confrontation, destined to ripple beyond this parking lot, ignited. The cold night pressed closer, shadows stretching over Daniel's face as the tension thickened between him and the civilian. Every breath he took seemed to reverberate in the empty parking lot. He could feel the weight of the badge against his chest, the chain of authority inherited from decades of precedent and regulation. Yet authority alone could not dissolve the stubborn flicker of defiance in the figure across from him. "Step back, now," Daniels commanded, voice steady but sharp, each syllable deliberate. The civilian's smirk widened, mocking both the command and the uniform itself. Bodycam footage would later show the almost imperceptible tilt of Daniel's head, a subconscious recalibration, the mental scale weighing risk, protocol, and human unpredictability. His academy training flashed through his mind: verbal de-escalation first, communication, patience, and yet, experience whispered differently. A quiet insistence that respect must sometimes be demanded, not requested. The civilian leaned slightly into the shadow of a rusted SUV, hands tucked into pockets, posture casual yet challenging. "Or what?" The words sliced through the cold air, carrying both bravado and a subtle taunt. Daniel's eyes narrowed, tracing every movement, every subtle shift in weight that might hint at aggression. The parking lot, silent except for the distant hum of traffic and a faint barking dog, felt simultaneously vast and claustrophobic. Inside Daniel's, internal friction built. His voice, once calm, now carried a clipped cadence, sharp edges betraying the thin line between control and frustration. "Or I take appropriate action," he said, words precise, measured to reflect law, procedure, and authority. Training, department policy, and municipal code merged into a single mental checklist. Ensure safety, red intent, de-escalate verbally before moving to physical enforcement. Yet as the civilian laughed softly, a sound that echoed in the empty lot, Daniel felt that professional detachment slip, replaced by a human, visceral impatience. A pause, almost imperceptible, stretched the seconds. Then a sudden, mocking step closer, eyes locked on Daniel's. The civilian stance taunting yet cautious, every muscle taut with defiance. Daniel's hand hovered over his holster, not to draw, but instinctively to signal readiness. The body cam, chest-mounted and unobtrusive, captured the electric microsecond tension, the quiet negotiation of power. "Sir," Daniels repeated, voice controlled but strained, "I need you to follow instruction." The word need carried more weight than protocol could dictate. It was authority, morality, and desperation wrapped together. The civilian's lips curled into another smirk, but the smirk faltered ever so slightly. Just enough for Daniel's trained eye to notice the tension beneath bravado. It was then that the emotional fracture became evident. Years of adherence to law clashed with raw human impulse. Daniels knew that any misstep could escalate to a full-blown arrest, but the unpredictable human element, anger, pride, defiance, had already blurred the line between words and action. His heart beat faster, awareness heightening. Each micro-movement of the civilian's shoulders, each glance around the lot, was analyzed in real time. The officer's mind raced through statutory rights, departmental escalation protocols, and the consequences of even a single misjudged reaction. Silence stretched again. Then, in the body cam frame, the civilian spoke, a quiet sentence that carried layered meaning, defiance wrapped in a casual tone, an unspoken challenge to authority. Daniel's patience, already fragile, snapped. A terse command issued from his lips, authority sharpened by the invisible pressure of procedure and human emotion alike. The lot seemed to close in, the walls of the parking structure pressing shadows like fingers against both men. Every movement, every word, every hesitation was now a study in fractured authority. The officer's voice, once calm and procedural, trembled with human imperfection. The civilian's body language, poised yet wary, hinted at both recklessness and caution. Somewhere between the codebook and instinct, between law and human nature, the confrontation had begun to breathe its own life, a living tension that no training alone could fully contain. The cold asphalt pressed into Daniel's boots as he stepped closer, each movement deliberate, measured, a choreography learned from hours of training and years of routine patrols. Every detail mattered. The angle of approach, the position of his body relative to the civilian, the soft clink of his duty belt as it shifted with his movement. The body cam recorded it all, his tense shoulders, the subtle tightening of his jaw, the calculated sweep of his flashlight across the lot. Every action weighed against procedure and instinct alike. "Turn around," Daniels ordered, voice low, controlled, authoritative. There was no inflection, no room for debate. The command hung in the air, heavy and unavoidable, the civilian paused, a hand lingering in a pocket, eyes narrowing, chest shifting slightly as if readying for some undefined move. Every second stretched longer than it should, the body cam capturing the almost imperceptible hesitation that could tip the scale from words to force. Daniel's mind raced through the sequence: secure the scene, ensure his partner's backup remained aware, follow department protocol for a non-compliant subject, internal affairs drills, academy hours, municipal codes. Every procedural anchor was present, yet human emotion pulsed beneath. The officer's patience, already fractured, throbbed at the edges. The civilian's smirk faltered. For the first time, a subtle acknowledgement of the officer authority crept into his posture. Shoulders shifted slightly back. A foot tapped the asphalt nervously, though the defiance had not entirely faded. Daniels noted the change, read the micro signs with a practiced eye, and stepped forward again, carefully closing the gap. Hands behind your back. Now, the command was simple, but every syllable carried the weight of law, authority, and personal resolve. The civilian complied, slowly, deliberately, each movement an exercise in both resistance and recognition of consequence. Daniel's gloved hand moved toward the cuffs, opening them with a crisp click that echoed faintly in the empty lot. The first cuff clasped around a wrist with a subtle snap. The second followed, guided by both precision and caution. Every movement was recorded in sharp, unforgiving detail by the chest-mounted camera, a visual testament to the collision of human will and procedural mandate. Each click of metal against metal reverberated, punctuating the tension like a metronome counting down inevitability. In the background, distant traffic hummed, a dog barked, and a faint siren swelled in the night, grounding the moment in reality. Daniel's eyes flicked constantly between the civilian and the surrounding lot, scanning for threats, assessing environmental factors, and anticipating any sudden resistance. Training dictated readiness, but instinct and adrenaline dictated vigilance. "Do you understand why this is happening?" Daniels asked, voice firm but even, a procedural inquiry layered with moral weight. The civilian's reply was quiet, almost swallowed by the night. A single, muttered word that carried both frustration and grudging acknowledgement. Body language spoke louder. Shoulders hunched, eyes averted, the subtle resignation of someone realizing the boundaries of defiance. With the handcuffs secured, Daniels performed a quick safety check, patting down pockets, scanning for weapons, ensuring that both protocol and common sense were aligned. The procedural steps were deliberate, methodical, rehearsed, yet each carried heightened tension, because this was no longer a training exercise. It was real, charged, irreversible in its documentation. The civilian's gaze flickered to the body cam, perhaps realizing fully now that every nuance, every reaction, every spark of defiance had been recorded. The realization shifted the dynamic. Words had escalated, authority had fractured, and now the physical manifestation of control was undeniable. The handcuffs were not just metal. They were consequence, proof, and a tangible echo of that single sentence that had ignited the spark. In the lot, the bodycam's red recording light continued its silent vigil, a merciless witness to the confrontation that had just unfolded. In the police station's evidence room, the footage replayed on a grainy monitor, each frame dissected under fluorescent lights that cast long, cold shadows across the linoleum floor. Daniels sat in a chair just outside the room, posture rigid but eyes hollow, replaying the night in his mind. Every flash of motion, every clipped word, every micro-expression of the civilian had been recorded. Proof, accountability, and, in a way, judgment. Investigators leaned in close to the screen, their faces impassive but their minds calculating. Internal affairs had been notified automatically, a protocol embedded into the department's chain of command. Any use of authority escalating to physical restraint required immediate review. Policies dictated method, hierarchy dictated scrutiny, and the camera dictated truth. The footage, meticulous and unblinking, revealed nuances the human eye often misses. The way the officer's hand trembled slightly, the subtle shifting of the civilian stance, the infinitesimal delay before compliance. Notice how he hesitates, one investigator said quietly, pointing at a frame where Daniel's voice cuts through the night. It's a microsecond, but it tells us everything about his state of mind. The others nodded, taking notes. Every procedural element, the approach, the commands, the positioning of hands, the timing between instruction and compliance, was weighed against department protocols. The human element, however, could not be ignored. Frustration, instinct, ego, and fear had all played their part. Meanwhile, Daniels replayed his own actions in silence, internal critique sharper than any outside observation. His voice had wavered only slightly, his patience only momentarily fractured. Yet he felt the weight of every decision pressing down. He knew that accountability now extended beyond the lot, to supervisors, to legal review, and to the court of public opinion that often consumed police encounters like this one. The body cam did not forgive or forget. It echoed everything: authority, failure, and humanity in cold, unblinking record. The civilian's perspective had not been lost either. In subsequent interviews, he described the night in visceral, emotional terms: the sudden shift from casual defiance to handcuffs, the subtle micro-signals he had misread, the fear that welled behind bravado. Investigators compared these narratives to the footage, layering procedural fact with human perception. The collision of these perspectives revealed something that policies alone could not account for: the fragile, complex tension between law, authority, and human fallibility. Back in the lot, in memory and on record, the small details that had seemed insignificant: the way light bounced off a rusted bumper, the hum of distant traffic, the shiver of cold air across Daniel's face, now gained moral and psychological weight. The officer's reaction, the civilian's resistance, and the final compliance all coalesced into a lesson on authority's limits and human unpredictability. Each frame replayed a story that no single word or action could fully contain, a story both procedural and profoundly human. As the footage cycled again and again, the department began to see patterns. The officer's adherence to protocol had prevented a more volatile outcome, yet the emotional fracture was undeniable. Microsecond decisions, honed by training yet vulnerable to impulse, had dictated the course of events. Policy documents were annotated, internal memos drafted, and recommendations for future de-escalation measures began to take shape. The echoes on record were not just evidence, they were catalysts for reflection, institutional scrutiny, and systemic evaluation. In that fluorescent-lit room, the boundary between accountability and empathy blurred. The footage, impartial and exacting, allowed for no moral ambiguity in the moment, yet human judgment would layer interpretation, consequence, and reform over it. The night's confrontation had passed, but its echoes persisted, reverberating through halls of power, protocol and conscience alike. The morning sun slanted through the blinds of the precinct, cutting stripes of pale light across the beige linoleum floor. Daniels sat alone in the briefing room, the weight of the previous night pressing against his spine. The lot, the shadows, the single sentence that had ignited the confrontation. All of it played in slow motion behind his eyes. Every tap of a pen on the desk, every hum of the fluorescent lights, reminded him that the night's chaos had consequences far beyond asphalt and metal. Internal Affairs had filed a preliminary report within hours. The footage, paired with witness statements and departmental logs, became the nucleus of scrutiny. Daniels knew the review would dissect every second: hand placement, tone of voice, adherence to protocol. Each minor deviation, a slight tremor in the hand, a word clipped too sharply, a pause misjudged, would be analyzed with cold precision. Policy was unyielding, impartial, and absolute. Human judgment, however, was less so. The procedural certainty of law collided with the messy, unpredictable calculus of morality. Across town, the civilian faced his own set of repercussions: a misdemeanor citation, mandatory court dates, and the residual humiliation of being on the wrong side of authority. Yet in interviews with investigators, his account revealed layers of misunderstanding, pride, and instinct. He attested limits, and in doing so, revealed the vulnerabilities of a system built on both human discretion and legal structure. Authority, it seemed, was not just exercised, it was challenged, and sometimes broken by a single word, a single choice. Departmental leadership convened to review the footage, discussing reforms and procedural tweaks. Recommendations included updated verbal de-escalation protocols, additional training on reading micro-expressions, and mandated officer reflection after high-tension encounters. The body cam had achieved more than documentation. It had forced a recalibration of policy, a tangible response to the collision of impulse and procedure. Daniel's superiors emphasized that accountability was not about punishment alone. It was about systemic improvement, about preventing another spark from igniting in a quiet lot under flickering streetlights. Daniels walked through the precinct halls later that afternoon, each step echoing softly in the empty corridors. Colleagues glanced up, some with curiosity, others with quiet understanding. The weight of judgment, internal, procedural, and public, had shifted subtly but unmistakably. He carried it not as a badge of shame, but as a burden of conscience. Training and protocol had guided him, but human fallibility had defined the night. Outside, the city moved on. Traffic hummed, children played in distant yards, and the lot where words had become handcuffs sat silent under daylight. Yet the moral reverberations lingered. Daniels reflected on the fragility of authority, how easily it could fracture, how quickly human emotion could tip the balance between procedure and instinct. Policy reforms, legal scrutiny, and community oversight were essential, but they were only part of the equation. The other part, the conscience, resided within every officer, every civilian, every person who navigates the thin line between law and humanity. By evening, Daniels filed his reflection report, candid, procedural, morally weighted. He recounted each decision, each hesitation, and each internal dialogue, offering a rare window into the human side of law enforcement. His words were meticulous, grounded, but undeniably human, a bridge between the cold objectivity of policy and the warm, chaotic unpredictability of human interaction. The system had reacted, reviews, minor reforms, and a renewed emphasis on empathy within protocol. Yet the true lesson, the quiet moral echo of that night, would not be captured in memos or meetings. It lingered in the officer's chest, in the civilian's wary glance, in the silent testimony of a body cam that never blinked. Authority, consequence, and conscience had intertwined, leaving an indelible mark on all who witnessed it, directly or indirectly. In the end, justice did not feel like triumph. It felt measured, heavy, and reflective. It was accountability tempered by introspection, policy reinforced by human experience, and a reminder that even in structured systems, morality and conscience remain as essential as law itself.